The years following the war were times of unrest and uncertainty. Slave owners in the Deep South sought to recover wartime losses by importing African slaves at an ever-increasing rate. Angry war veterans protested in public for moratoriums on their debts and equal distribution of the land. Individual states took up arms against each other in border disputes, and there was constant speculation about splitting the new nation up into 13 separate countries. In 1787, representatives from 12 of the 13 states met in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for a constitutional convention. They were there to restore order to a nation in turmoil. George Washington was summoned from his Virginia plantation to preside over the convention.
By the end of the Revolution, Washington is the revolution to a lot of people. He has an enormous amount of pride in the revolution and knows that it is far from being complete, knows from his study of history that very easily a counter-revolution could take place and they would lose all they had fought for.
There was no greater division in the nation than the one that lay between the states that had begun to abolish slavery and those that had not. In 1780, Pennsylvania lawmakers ruled that in keeping with the Revolution's principles of equality, they would extend their freedom to others. As a result, all black children born in Pennsylvania from that year forward were to be freed at age 28. In 1783, Massachusetts outlawed slavery entirely, based on a state constitution that declared all men are born free and equal. Connecticut and Rhode Island soon followed with gradual emancipation acts. As the tide began to turn against slaveholders in the North, the nation's founders laid the groundwork for a society that could grow while both espousing ideals of liberty and endorsing the practice of slavery.
Every time a new state was brought into the Union, the test was there a slave state to bring in with a free state? So we've got a nation now growing with the interest of free states and the slave states kind of trying to grow in tandem.
It's a dispute between two different systems. One system of slavery, based upon slavery, and the other system based upon free labor. And so virtually every issue that was discussed in the Constitutional Convention had an impact from slavery.
Delegates voiced great concern over the protection of individual liberties and personal property. For Southern delegates, one of the most important liberties was the right to own slaves. While they wanted a federal government that would protect their rights, they did not want a governing body that would emancipate their slaves.
The problem with the libertarian ideology of the entire revolutionary and constitutional period is this notion that the pursuit of happiness is tied to property. So even though Thomas Jefferson is able to say all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights, these rights include the right of property. As strongly as people might adhere to the notion of liberty and freedom, they adhere just as strongly to the notion of property.
In the course of 6 months, the 55 delegates drafted the foundation of American law and government. Neither the word slave nor slavery appear in the Constitution, but the fate of enslaved men, women, and children was carefully inscribed within its pages. The U.S. Constitution prevented Congress from voting to end the African slave trade for a minimum of 20 years. Free states were required by law to return fugitives to the slave states, and slave states were permitted to count 3/5 of their slave population in determining the number of representatives they would send to Congress. Slaveholders won an enormous political victory. owning slaves would be part of the American freedom, and in the process, a union was forged.